So welcome to the non-bespectacled edition of the Sens Nation podcast. And lots to get to. Wrote an article in the Hockey News today about David Perron and thinking about the roster as it may stand. The forward lines are kind of interesting. It was NHL.com. I think Callan Fraser put out something this week about the projected forward lines. And it was kind of, I don't know, it was just when you see other people putting stuff out there, it's usually, it's not the be-all, end-all, obviously. It all rests with Travis Green and what he plans to do. But I was kind of taken aback that he had David Perron. Like, here's a guy with almost 1,200 career NHL games, more than that if you count playoffs, Stanley Cup ring. He's a 55-point average per season in his career. Second half of his career, he's been around the 50-point mark, even a couple of years ago at 47. I just had a hard time seeing him as a fourth-line player, especially making $4 million a year.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit off the air. There's a good chance this could be a team that is doing what a lot of teams do, and that is really relying on forward pairs.
Yeah, forward pairs. We talked about off camera, right? Stützle and Tkachuk and Batherson and Cousins and Greg and Pinto and Cousins and Eller, yeah. And then you've got four right wingers. So assuming David Perron is a right winger, right, the man can play the left side too. But if he's a right winger on this club, he's fourth. Like, I'm sorry. It kind of seems weird to say that, like you say, looking at a roster and seeing a David Perron, a player of his stature in the game and his pedigree and his stats, and seeing him on the fourth line. But when you look at who's ahead of him, Giroux and Zetterlund and Amadio, maybe he flips up and down with Amadio. Maybe they open the season with Amadio on the fourth line and Perron on the third line. Like, Perron with Pinto and Greg could look pretty good too. But I really think between those four guys, or especially the top three, between Zetterlund, Giroux, and Perron, you're going to see a lot of flipping around up and down the roster and switching sides. And, depending on injuries, Giroux could play center, Zetterlund could show he can play either wing, and Perron can play either wing. So I'm Coach Travis Green. I'm kind of excited about that prospect.
I think that out of the gate anyway, unless things get really cold, I think Amadio is that, that third line just was so good for so much of the season, just looked really stable on both sides of the puck. I kind of feel like he's entrenched in there, but you're right. Perron would look equally good on that line potentially. I think there's an opportunity. I don't necessarily see Amadio on the top line, but beyond that, of those four wingers who are kind of wild card wingers, really, I can see anybody on any given night, if one of them's going cold, I can see a full fluctuation. I don't like Giroux in the fourth line very much, but I can see most of the chess pieces being laid out in those four wild card wingers, as I'm calling them. It could be interesting. And David Perron is also an interesting character. Now, back in May, he talked to the media about the kind of season that he'd had. And, of course, he was 47 points in Detroit 2 seasons ago, and then he comes to Ottawa and really couldn't stay in the lineup. I think he had I want to say maybe 10 games, and it's late January at that stage. He had the injuries. He had the issues with family. And then he was happy that he was able to kind of finish the season strongly, and then had 3 points in 6 games in the playoffs. But what I was a little surprised by was to hear him, here's a veteran who's probably seen it all. He said there is kind of a tendency when he transitions to a new team that things don't necessarily go that well in the early going. Here's David Perron back in May at the season end media availability.
I think changing team is always tough. It's for me, it always has been. I don't know, like my style of play maybe. Like what I do on the ice, it takes a little bit of time to get the trust and maybe understanding of the coaches, even players who I'm playing with, chemistry on the ice, honestly, maybe even you guys or the fans, to have a it's nice that you feel like if your game is respected and you feel like appreciated for what you do, and then you just go out there and put an honest effort. And it felt like I was able to build that a little bit better towards the end of the year, and it's fun. But again, like my other moves, I would say would be similar at the start. So it was a little bit tougher for sure, other than just the personal stuff. And yeah.
Did you feel that? Did you feel that pressure?
No, I was kind of putting in the work and knowing or hoping that it would turn the right way. I guess knowing more from experience that it would, because I always felt like my game was respected and appreciated for kind of the little things I do out there. Like, I'm not a flashy player. I'm not going out there and try and find breakaways and cheat for this or cheat for that. But, like the plays within the game, the battle level, the battles on the board, the puck play, things like that. And it was good to be able to kind of find it. It comes with more opportunity. The more you get out there, the more ice time. More, obviously, you always want more. And I also understand where I'm at in my career. So it's all things that also I'm battling inside on a daily basis. To the fire's fully there to want more, and then understanding the situation, what's around me.
So there is David Perron conversation with the media, an old war horse. He's still a very young man compared to us. So you say those in NHL perspective and terms, but a guy who's a graybeard by NHL standards. You surprised at all to hear him say that transition from one team to the next is something that doesn't necessarily go that smoothly for him?
Yeah, I am actually. There's a part of me that thinks, wait a minute, you're David Perron. You're 50 points a year pretty much wherever you've played. It seems strange that he can't adjust, or that he thinks the adjustment is outside influences, coaches and players getting used to me and all that. No. You step in, you play your game, and people should adjust to you and understand how and what you're doing and work to play well with you. I find it strange that he would think that people have a difficult time adjusting to him, or even a coach. Like, any coach in this league who's been around for a while knows the type of player that he is. So I don't see any adjustment time there either. I think he just had a tough time getting going, getting untracked, as they say, right? We've talked about it ad nauseum here, the injury to start the year, the family issue to start the year, and he's older, so it takes him a little bit of time to get going once he finally does play, and then they're doing well, so where does he fit in the lineup? To me, I think he's just kind of looking for excuses when he doesn't need to.
I think part of it is that he's just not a flashy player. He's not a fast player. He's not a guy that's going to make a lot of highlight reel plays. But what he does is he's good with the puck, got good vision, got great hockey IQ, and he's really hard along the boards. Like, he is, I don't think the Sens fans got a real good taste of it this year, but he really has that Mark Stone heavy stick quality where somehow, some way, he always comes out of 50-50 battles with the puck. And that kind of player can sometimes, I hate to use the word disappoint, but in a way, you hear about David Perron, Stanley Cup champion, the guy who's, he's flirted with 70 points before in the league. Don't know if he's gotten there, but always a reliable 55, 60 point guy. And so you've got this idea of like, okay, we got Perron, it's going to be good. And then you see him for the first time as a coach and you're going, and maybe judgments are made. And maybe that's part of what Perron is talking about when he says, earning trust, and because he's not the flashiest player. That's my best guess. But I'm with you. It is a little surprising to hear him speak that way. But it does. Even these multimillionaire, healthy, good-looking young guys who are NHL stars, it shows even those guys have a little bit of second guessing going on in them.
Yeah, but I think are we wrong? He is what he is. He's heavy on the forecheck. He's a cycle guy. He's a dump and chase guy. He's not going to do anything with any speed, and he's very good defensively. He's smart in his own zone. He's reliable. That's what he is. So to me, he's the type of guy that a coach would love. The only thing that you might not like is the speed. The foot speed's not there. He's not that quick, but he's scored clutch goals, clutch points. He's been on championship teams. He's been on teams that have had deep runs. I would have no problem adjusting to him as a player, stepping into my lineup if I were the coach, and I'm sure you would say the same thing. So I wonder if maybe it's a little bit of a inferiority complex. I really wonder if he's just kind of trying to look for excuses and just say, well, I'm a tough guy to get along with, or, I got to learn how to play this one. Sorry, not a tough guy to get along with, a tough guy to react to and understand and acclimate to me. I don't see that as being a problem, but I think maybe his vanity, his shyness, his lack of ego is maybe behind some of those comments.
I have a hard time going down that road with you. Maybe it's a case of unless you walk a mile in the guy's shoes, we don't know what happened in previous stops around the NHL, and he's reporting what he believes was happening, and maybe it did. Maybe we're just assuming that it shouldn't happen, but maybe it did. So, anyway, interesting comments from David Perron. Like I say, he is a really quality character. I mean, the Sens have done a really good job. Even going back to Pierre Dorion, people would give Pierre Dorion a hard time. Is he a high character guy? And concerns about that. But I think it's all born. It's good practice to bring in guys who have high character, but that can't be the be all end all of your evaluation of a player. But I think for Dorion, it started with the whole Ubergate thing, and when Carlson and Mike Hoffman were kind of warring over what was happening with their wives and girlfriends, and they kind of blew the team up shortly after that. I think as they move forward, Dorion did not want to go down that road again, and so he really wanted to make sure that he had a good locker room, and that's good practice in general, but he was, I think, really almost overstressing it back then. And now with Steve Staios coming in, I think he's carried on that tradition, not making that the be-all, end-all of the evaluation of the player, but certainly part of the equation. I really like the Sens locker room and David Perron from that perspective, and probably this season, in an on-ice perspective, I think he's a good add to this team, and I hope that he and Claude Giroux both still have plenty left in the tank.
Couldn't agree more. Steve Staios hasn't had a miss yet. He's right. He's swinging a miss. Pierre's problem was, I think, that most of those guys that he brought in with the high character quality just weren't good enough anymore. Just couldn't play. You could even go back to the trade for Burroughs. He wasn't good enough. Nice guy, good in the room, all that sort of stuff. Players liked him. He wasn't good enough. Derek Stepan wasn't good enough. I think Branson still had some game and has shown it since leaving Ottawa, but in Ottawa playing here, he wasn't good enough. And don't even get me started on Cedric Paquette and some of those other guys that were brought in. But Pierre's problem was he could find a character player, but he couldn't seem to find a character player who could contribute some offense. And it's good in the room, bad on the ice. It doesn't work.
And he had a guy paying the bills who didn't want to pay the bills.
There you go.
Get me some veteran character guys. Okay, I can get this guy and that guy. That's a little bit much.
Too steep.
What's Cedric Paquette going to cost us? What can you do about it? So that's part of it.
Of course.
Anyway, moving on. Talk about some other things. Anxious to see how David Perron does this year. I think I said in one of our recent episodes, that he is one of my candidates for a big bounce back season.
The Ford It's a Big Deal event is on. Right now at Jim K. Ford, lease a 2025 Escape Active all-wheel drive from $198 bi-weekly at 1.99% APR for 36 months with $2,755 down. That's like $99 weekly. Plus a $750 bonus for eligible Ford owners. Like we said, it's a big deal and it's on now, but not for long. Visit Jim K. Ford today for details or online at jimkford.com.
At Jim K. Ford Lincoln, we say yes!
Here in Canada, we don't just make lights. We craft possibility, connection, and celebration, built right here by people who care about what they're creating. At Celebrite, we're made of all the colors of the RGB rainbow, each person bringing their own brilliance. Because when we come together, we make something brighter. Celebrite.ca, proudly made in Canada.
Yep.
But from the other end of the age perspective, we have young Carter Yakemchuk, who will be coming in to his first training camp. Officially, he will be a pro this year. Back to Calgary is not an option any longer, so it'll be Belleville or Ottawa for him. And I wonder, are we shortchanging his chances a little bit? You think back to last year, he was the final cut. No one would have been surprised at the end of training camp if he at least hung for that, first 9 games or whatever the rule is, and then go back to junior. But he was good enough to be on the team if all things were equal.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to, obviously. This is a team that's all about best in class, and it was a good idea to go back for more seasoning, learn more of the defensive side of the game. He had the offense from a blue line perspective down pat, His offensive numbers took a hit last year going back to Calgary, but worked on the things he needed to work on. So now he's back for a second attempt. Again, are we shortchanging his opportunity and just sort of assuming it's going to be either Jordan Spence, who I think is the inside edge on that number 6 right shot D spot, or Nicholas Matanpalo at 7? Are we shortchanging Carter Yakemchuk? What a long-winded question.
Wow.
Go.
Wow. Well, I will say this. I want to be officially on record that I think Jordan Spence is more like the second guy. I think Jordan Spence is more suited to playing with Sanderson or Shabbat than playing in the bottom pair. But anyway, that's just me.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm talking about, you know,
I know,
if Jensen, the Jensen factor, that's a whole different discussion.
Let's go to Yakemchuk. Yes, I think we probably are shortchanging him. Apparently, it was all done with a plan. There was a reason that his stats were down. It's that he was trying to be a better defender, play better in his own zone, make better decisions at the offensive blue line when in an offensive position, pulling out early, pinching properly in the neutral zone, not being quite so aggressive, not being quite so offensively minded, not thinking offense first all the time. And apparently he improved. He improved dramatically in his defensive work. And if that was the one knock against him last year at training camp, and that's improved, and you thought he was good enough to make the team last year, why wouldn't he be good enough if he's made improvements in his weaknesses? Why wouldn't he be good enough now to make the team this year? So, yeah, I think there's an opportunity there. I think that if you talked to Steve Staios and he was willing to tell you the absolute truth, they'd probably like the kid to start the year in the American League and then see how it goes, and maybe the projection to call him up around Christmas, get him some games as a pro. I think that would be the perfect route. But if he's good enough from the get-go, training camp and preseason, then yeah, he's going to make this team, no doubt about it, and he'll play here.
No doubt about it. Wow.
Well, yeah, seriously though, if he's good enough, should he not be here?
I mean, I would have made that argument last year. He lost out, Greg, to Jacob Bernard-Docker and Travis Hamonic last year, effectively. So,
okay, so
you're obviously
right.
You're making decisions based on what's best for the player sometimes, not necessarily whether he's truly NHL ready. Tyler Clevin, I think, should have been on this team sooner than he was, but they left him down in Belleville for a real purpose, and I really feel like they will do that again. Steve Staios is not just a general manager. He is a long-time stay-at-home NHL defenseman of over 1,000 games himself. He knows the position, he knows the game, and he knows development. And so I feel like, despite my question off the top, are we shortchanging him? I really feel like it's probably the best for him. And it's still, I'm not convinced. I'm anxious to see what he looks like in training camp and preseason games, because why did the Ottawa Senators draft Carter Yakemchuk in the first round to start with? It was because of his amazing offensive stats. True. He was a 30-goal scorer in the Western Hockey League, and big numbers, like north of 70 points, I think it was. So people were excited about that, and that's why he was drafted 7th overall. And now we've asked him to add on this defensive component to things, and his offensive numbers took a spill. If his offensive numbers this season were like that last year at the 2024 NHL draft, would he be the 7th overall pick? I don't know. So I don't know where I'm at with Carter Yakemchuk until I see if he can kind of restore that offensive swagger while doing all these defensive chores that the Sens have asked him to do. He may be a kid whose head is spinning right now because he probably played only one way for his entire career. Until I see it in the NHL, you can talk about Calgary all you want. I'm interested to see if that new hybrid Yakemchuk is still kind of that first-round pedigree type player. That remains to be seen for me.
Okay, but if he comes into camp like last year, plays preseason, and was he not their leading scorer through the preseason? Now, granted, he played way more games than most other people as a young kid. But if he has those kind of stats again, Steve, despite what we believe may be best for him to go to the American Hockey League, if he has those kind of stats in the preseason, should he not start the year here? I say yes. I say, like, if he's going to be that good and he looks that good in the preseason, let's take it up a notch, give him some NHL games, and they can always send him down 2 weeks later. But if he's that good again, I think you got to put him in the roster to start the season.
It would be a wonderful sign if he did, because that would answer my question as to whether the offense can be resurrected again to where it was.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't just that he led the Sens in scoring. And I think he had 7 points in 4 games. He was 6th in the entire NHL, like among all skaters in the preseason. So that was a hell of a preseason for him. And yeah, it would be an amazing sign. But, you know, if he's a -11 in his 4 games, then you're sort of going, okay, it's great for the points and everything. So it will be interesting to see what kind of progress he's made and whether the offense can kind of come along for the ride with this new defensive philosophy that he's got. But
I think
he's physical and he's big, and that's going to certainly help the back end because that's the way everything's going.
Exactly. And I think it's safe to say that the singular most watched, most under the microscope area for this team in training camp and preseason is going to be who's playing right D and in what slot. I really think that's that. Obviously, I mean, I'm really not any big revelation here, but I think that's the biggest question for this club right now. Who's playing right D and in what order do they get slotted? That is the singular biggest question. That is what we're all going to be watching and evaluating through training camp and through the preseason.
And the wild card is Nick Jensen.
Right.
I keep saying, you know, he looked so good on that rollerblading outing with his one of his kids in a stroller. But I keep hearing that no, he's probably not going to start the year. So I don't know. I haven't seen anything official from the Sens. They're hopeful. Hip surgery's kind of a big deal. This just in, especially when you're going to be 35 when the regular season starts this year, and you're also entering a contract year. So it will be interesting. I keep saying it will be interesting. Will you reach out and punch me the next time I say that?
I'll put this to you, though. I'll put this to you. How good would this team be if Jensen's healthy for training camp? Okay, let's assume he is. How good would this team be if they break camp and Jensen's on the third pair? Legitimately the third pair guy because somebody else has stepped up and is playing above him. Like, that would be really nice.
I don't see it.
That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think I've said it. I think I've said it like close to 7 or 8 times already on the show. It'll be interesting to see if I say it again. I'm not seeing him.
I am.
I'm seeing him either on the. I get that. I'm seeing him either on the sideline or in his number 2 spot. I don't see anybody else in the team. If he's healthy, I think. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible he's healthy and he's not the player he was anymore, but I don't see it. I figure he'll.
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying he's healthy and someone's better. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, last season, undisputed top 4 defenseman on this team, and if you take that healthy version of Nick Jensen, whatever point in the season it was last year, and you drop him into training camp, you think someone that's currently beneath him on the depth chart can leapfrog him?
I'm saying I'd love to see it. I really would. I can't. I got more faith in Spence than you do. I think that's obvious. And I see this Spence guy. They acquired him, and I believe they acquired him to be in a top 4 role. Maybe not right away. Maybe it will be right away with Jensen's injury. But I see Spence being a top 4 guy. I really do.
It just doesn't seem to fit with their MO, loading up on these big defensemen. And, they've already got Shabbat there, and Sanderson's not particularly physical. Zub is so physicality-wise. Now you're going to jam a 5'10" guy into the top 4. Could happen, but it doesn't seem to fit with kind of their MO of going after size. Today, for example, they went out and got the American Hockey League, an American Hockey League contract for the team captain of the Owen Sound Attack. His name is Landon Hookie. So they're hoping to play hooky this year.
Should be interesting to see.
Certainly should. But he's a guy that is 6'5", 225 pounds, doesn't mind a good bout. Yeah. It's like, okay, we at a stage now. It's like anybody that's big, we're interested in it. Yeah, I like the kid. Like, I've seen him in a few interviews, and he is a high character guy again. But he was a point a game guy on an Owen Sound team that just snuck into the playoffs, and for their troubles, lost 4 straight to the Memorial Cup champion London Knights. I think they gave up 27 goals in 4 games. Ay caramba. But no, just there's another example of this team. They say they're going after guys that are, the best guys available and such. They're not really focusing on, but the eye test tells maybe a different story. Anyway, back to Spence at 5'10". I think they like him, but I don't know. That seems like when you're looking at the Florida Panthers, loaded with skill, but also Paul Maurice yelling at them, pound their D, pound their D. How resilient will that D with Jordan Spence as part of their top four be exactly? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
The Ford It's a Big Deal event is on. Right now at Jim K. Ford lease a 2025 Escape Active all-wheel drive from $198 bi-weekly at 1.99% APR for 36 months with $2,755 down. That's like $99 weekly. Plus a $750 bonus for eligible Ford owners. Like we said, it's a big deal and it's on now, but not for long. Visit Jim K. Ford today for details or online at jimkford.com.
At Jim K. Ford Lincoln, we say yes.
Here in Canada, we don't just make lights. We craft possibility, connection, and celebration, built right here by people who care about what they're creating. At Celebrite, we're made of all the colors of the RGB rainbow, each person bringing their own brilliance. Because when we come together, we make something brighter. Celebrite.ca, proudly made in Canada.
What did you think of Travis Green in his first season as Ottawa Senators head coach?
I think that a large part of his success, or the success of the team, was probably predicated on the fact that he's a completely different person from DJ Smith. I think that probably helped in a great deal here, right? And in that sense, he's a different person than Jacques Martin. I think that the demands that Travis Green and his staff put on this team, and the new system, and the accountability, and how we're going to play the game, and what it means to be an Ottawa Senator, I think all those things really helped him cement his position here and achieve some success, because he's a presence, and a completely different presence than they were used to. The question now becomes, can he build on that? Is his second season going to be better than his first season? That's a tough challenge sometimes to coach. It's in a sense, it's easy to follow somebody. It's especially easy to follow somebody when you're a different type, when you're an opposite to that guy. It's easy to follow that guy. You come in and do things differently, and everybody's like, oh, hey, this is good. Look at that. Look at this. Look at that. Most players like to have some sort of changes around, and then they change the system, and it just makes it easy to have some sort of success. The test now is, can he do it again for a second year in a row? I think he can. I think with the additions that Steve Staios has made here, I think Travis Green will have a better season. The Senators will have a better season. And, maybe by the end of the year, he gets some love for Coach of the Year even.
He did a great job, did everything he could. At the end of the day, he got the Sens somewhere they haven't been in 8 years, and that's the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, a mark of A for that. And like you said, it's just a matter of, is he just not DJ Smith? Sometimes the strength of a coach is that he's not the old guy, and a new voice was clearly required. Jacques Martin was a nice interim fill-in, but now here's the new guy coming in, and that, I think, changed the dynamic. And I have a hard time evaluating a coach unless you're a fly on the wall, unless you're around the team, you're in the huddle at practice, you're behind closed doors in the locker room. Until you're there, and nobody in the media is, it's really hard to evaluate. I will say this. I know that Travis Green finds the day-to-day with the local reporters to be a tedious exercise. There's some days he'd rather not do it. And I think that a lot of coaches feel that way. Probably every coach feels that way in the NHL. I know I'd feel that way, constantly being asked. These questions get asked, but in a way, it's sort of passive-aggressive because you're almost second-guessing. And here's Travis Green, as an example, who's got a long playing career, reached the highest level. Now he's reached the highest level as an NHL head coach, and he's got to listen to a guy who's got a few years of reporting under his belt, second-guessing some of his systems and things like that. So I get why it would be tedious. I hope it's just a case of that, because just some days he really does I hope that his bedside manner with the media has no bearing or resemblance to how he communicates with his guys.
There you go.
Because
that's the point.
Because that would be concerning. But I don't. I unless I'm in the room, I can't know that, and I don't think that's the case.
Right. You can judge a coach based on plain and simple, the most basic way, stats. So how did the team perform? What was the record? What was the power play? What was the PK? We can look at stats, and that you can judge a coach. You can see a coach's hands and fingerprints on a system. You can see how they forecheck, how they defend. You can judge a coach based on who he puts on the ice in this situation, that situation, who plays with who, how he handles matchups, bench management. You can assess. The one thing you cannot assess, as you just alluded to, is how is he with the players? How does he interact with the players? How do the players really feel about him? Because nobody in a dressing room no player's ever going to say, "Oh, I hate the guy," right? Like you really don't know. And unless you're in that room, or unless you're in that room when the coach isn't around, you have no idea how he speaks, what his messaging is, how it comes across, how it's received. You can't know, and you'll never know.
It's an amazing balance, the communication process, the relationships you have with your players individually and as a collective. DJ Smith was beloved by his players, but by the end, they were getting tired of losing. And I think that they were, welcoming something different because it wasn't happening, but in terms of the guy, they liked him a lot. And then you have other situations where, let's say, the example we always use, if you're old enough to remember the Montreal Canadiens a million years ago back in the 70s when they won 4 straight Stanley Cups, Scotty Bowman was not a well-liked guy. They did not like him a bit, but you know what they did? They won a lot. How much Scotty had to do with that? I don't know. He kept getting handed the keys to a Cadillac, Habs, then the Penguins, and then the Red Wings. Why didn't you win in Buffalo? Just throwing that out there. But the bottom line is, players want to win. It's nice that they like the coach. That's a good thing too, but it's a tricky balance, isn't it?
Yeah. And the other big one is that one of the big misconceptions out there is that, a good coach treats all his players the same. That's not true. No coach, no boss, no executive should be treating everyone the same. Everyone needs to be treated individually and differently based on them. That's the key to a good coach. A good coach is a guy who understands I need to treat Steve Warren one way, but I need to treat Greg Kennedy a different way. That's the key to a good coach. He understands, and they talk about all the time. This guy needs the whip. This guy needs the love. This guy needs to be patted on the back. How I speak to people, how I express my desire for them, the way I want them to play, how I use them, how I put them in certain roles, how I talk to them when they're up, how I talk to them when they're down. It's all different. You don't want to treat every player the exact same. And I think that is another thing where we have no idea, right? You go back and look at Scotty Bowman, as you mentioned, treated everybody the exact same. That's the way it was back then. Yeah, the Steve Shutt quote was, we hated Scotty every day of the year except one, the day we got to raise the Stanley Cup, right? Otherwise, we hated him every day. And that's the way it was back then. Nowadays, the key to the coach is being a communicator, and the type of people that he's dealing with is completely different. And understanding your players and their personalities and their likes and their dislikes and what works for them and what's the whip and what's the candy, and getting through to them somehow or other. That's the key to a good coach.
Yeah. The only thing is, and it's very different at the pro ranks than it is in the amateur ranks. Obviously, you have to think if you're dealing with young players, you obviously have to, you can't go too hard on your bottom end players because they're, most of them aren't going anywhere near the point where they're going to make a penny playing in the NHL or anything like that. But at the pro level, these guys are all making a lot of dough, so it can be different. What you can't do in the name of your attempt at motivation is terrorize. Right. You can't be. I don't know what's a good example, like the whole Mike Babcock thing or the Mark Crawford apparently kicking a guy on the bench. Just those toxic coach moments. You can't be doing that. But there's no question that everybody has a different motivational need as a player, but at the same time, you also don't want to, it's got to be respect for all as well on top of that. Okay, so we're going to start winding this thing down, ladies and gentlemen. We do appreciate you being here today. Let's see if I got everything done that I wanted to get done. I threw in
I got chirps on the book, Steve.
Chirps.
People are chirping me about the bookcase.
Oh, really?
They think I went to the library and took a picture, and you put it up on a green screen behind me.
Green screen? Who would put a green screen? We would never do a green screen on this show.
I'm insulted by that.
I'll be on the moon in our next episode, by the way, just so you know. No, that is legitimately a bookcase in the background. Did they like the bookcase, though, at least?
Oh, some people did, yes. I heard from some that it was, wow, you got a lot of books.
Yeah, you certainly do. I thought at first they were all DVDs.
DVDs, yeah. Somebody made that crack on me one day, too.
Yeah.
He's coach got a lot of DVDs down there in his basement, doesn't he? Hardly.
Do you have a DVD player? No, nobody has a DVD player. Anyway, yes, they're all real, and that's why we've got you set up there, because it's a kind of cool background and stuff, as opposed to I just realized how messy with my big red water jug and stuff, and I got all these papers over here, and behind the scenes of the Sens Nation podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Here in the dog days of summer that you're still checking us out. We'll be back probably in the next couple of days with another episode here. And our website is always, as always, sensnationhockey.com. And please check out the hockey news. There is a page or a site devoted entirely to the Ottawa Senators. So if you could check it out, it's thn.com/Ottawa. That would be amazing. Greg, any final thoughts before we go?
No, I'm good, Steve. I got my final thoughts in on the books. See, I even went back. See, look, I can touch them. See, they're there. I can move books. See, they're real.
There you go. Done.
Yeah, done.
Okay.
That's all.
Enjoy your day, everybody, and we'll talk to you in our next episode. Thanks, Greg.
Good night, sir. Thank you.